It was a Saturday morning when I decided to finally clean out the attic. My house had been a work in progress since I moved in a few months ago, and the attic had always been the last place I wanted to deal with. It was cluttered with old furniture, forgotten boxes, and dust-covered belongings. But I'd promised myself that this weekend, I would finally clear it out. I grabbed a flashlight, opened the trapdoor, and climbed up into the attic, the creaky wooden stairs groaning under my weight. The smell of dust and mildew hit me as soon as I stepped inside. The dim light from the flashlight barely pierced the darkness, and the only sound was the occasional scurrying of what I assumed were mice hiding in the corners. I started sorting through the boxes, most of them filled with things left behind by the previous owner. Old clothes, some faded photographs, and books that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. But it wasn't until I moved a large, heavy blanket-covered object that I saw it. A mirror. Tall, with an ornate, gilded frame that seemed out of place among the piles of junk. It stood against the far wall, its surface covered in a layer of dust. There was something about it that immediately drew me in, though I couldn't explain why. Curious, I brushed away the dust, revealing the mirror's glass. For a moment, nothing seemed unusual. The reflection showed nothing but the clutter of the attic behind me. Old boxes, broken furniture, and a few empty shelves. But then, as I stared longer, I noticed something strange. There was a shadow moving in the reflection. It wasn't in the attic with me, but it was there, standing just behind me in the mirror. I turned around quickly, heart pounding in my chest, but there was nothing. No one. The attic was empty. I felt a shiver crawl down my spine, but I tried to brush it off as a trick of the light. After all, I'd just come from a long week at work, and I was tired. It was probably just my mind playing tricks on me. But as I turned back to face the mirror, the shadow was still there. This time it was clearer. A figure, standing just behind me, too still, too solid to be an illusion. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The shadow was tall, with dark, indistinct features that seemed to fade into the surrounding darkness. I reached for the flashlight, but before I could turn it back on, the figure in the mirror moved. It leaned forward, its face coming closer to the glass, its eyes locking with mine. The coldness of its gaze was enough to make my blood run cold. I stumbled back, dropping the flashlight. The room went completely dark. I scrambled to my feet and quickly made my way to the attic door, but as I opened it, I felt something cold grip my shoulder. I spun around, heart racing, but there was no one there. I quickly descended the stairs and slammed the attic door shut behind me. I stood in the hallway, panting, my hands trembling. I didn't know what I had just seen, but I knew I couldn't go back up there. Not yet. The mirror, whatever it was, felt wrong. There was something deeply unsettling about it. I spent the rest of the day trying to forget what had happened, but no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Every time I glanced toward the hallway, I half expected to see that shadow lurking there, waiting for me to make another mistake. The next day, I called a friend to help me remove the mirror. They agreed to come over, but when they arrived, they seemed uneasy. "I've never seen that mirror before," my friend said, glancing nervously at the attic door. "Where did it come from?" I told them it had been left behind by the previous owner, but even as I spoke, I could tell they weren't convinced. They didn't want to go near it either. But in the end, we had no choice. We went back upstairs, flashlight in hand, ready to move the mirror out of the attic. The second I stepped into the room, I felt it again. The coldness, the weight of being watched. My friend reached for the mirror, but as soon as their hand touched the frame, a loud crash rang through the room. I jumped back, the mirror vibrating with an energy I couldn't explain. I turned to my friend, but their face was pale, their eyes wide with fear. "Did you see it?" they asked, barely whispering. I looked at the mirror. The shadow was gone. but something worse had taken its place. In the reflection, I saw myself, but I wasn't standing in the attic anymore. I was back in my living room, sitting on the couch, staring at the television, completely unaware of what was happening in the attic. The room went silent, the air thick with tension. I felt my heart race as I realized what I was seeing. It wasn't just a reflection. It was another version of me, a version of me that didn't know about the shadow, a version that didn't even know I was in the attic, seeing what I saw. And then, as if in slow motion, the reflection of my living room began to distort. The shadow from before was creeping up behind my reflection. It reached out, its fingers stretching toward me. I pulled my friend away from the mirror, and without a word, we ran out of the attic, slamming the door shut behind us. I never went back upstairs. The mirror was left there, untouched. And even though I've tried to move on, I can't stop thinking about what I saw. Every time I pass the attic door, I feel that same chill, that same weight of being watched. What if the version of me in that mirror is still out there? What if it's still watching, waiting for me to slip up? And what if it's not the shadow in the mirror I should be afraid of, but the reflection itself?